Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour. And today, I have a very special guest who has quite a unique journey and has done something absolutely amazing in this world by helping
Welcome to the Weekend
the
Wellness.
first person with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman triathlon. And today we're going to be talking with Dan Grieb, who's also a real estate expert. He's a NLP, neuro-linguistic practitioner. He specializes in performance coach, and he is just a well-rounded individual, very amazing human being. So I want to welcome you, Dan, onto the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
I really appreciate you coming in. I know you're a busy person and you're taking time out of a real estate showing today. So thank you again for coming on this show today. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey because it's kind of unique. You have a business, you're completely outside of the fitness world, but you've kind of achieved some of the top things in the fitness world as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. I got to start back as a child. I was raised by a single mom, and the majority of my childhood was about survival. It wasn't really about getting healthy or getting a great education. It was just more survival, and it felt like that for me growing up. So I had a lot of dreams and goals of things I wanted to accomplish on my own, and one of them was being a police officer. And I've got a million stories I can tell you, but I'm going to narrow them down to a few throughout this hour we talk. I was a troubled kid who'd been abused by my father and suffered the wounds of that. I lived in an environment where most of the time we were attempting to survive or get by, and there was always tension. And one of the goals that I wanted to become a police officer. And I remember telling my high school guidance counselor that I wanted to be a police officer. And I remember her saying, forget about being a police officer. You'll be lucky not to be in jail. And it was crazy because that person never even took the time to ask me why I wanted to be a police officer. Because if she took a moment and said, Dan, why do you want to be a police officer? I had a very noble reason, because I wanted to protect kids from being abused from their fathers like I was. Yeah. But she never even asked that question. And that became a limiting belief for me that maybe I couldn't be a police officer, or maybe I needed to get in trouble because that's what I was destined to be. And then when I was 19, I got hit in the head with a bottle and had my temporal artery severed. I almost bled to death. And I remember thinking, like, this can't be the rest of my life. I'm going to grow up to be just like my dad. I'm not going to have any real impact on the world. I'm not going to do a lot. And like, everything's been taken away from me. I can't go in the military. I can't play sports in college. I can't do a lot of jobs now because I just had brain surgery. I'm going to just be like my dad. And that was a horrifying thought to me. Well, I ended up getting down into Florida. I had a religious conversion, and I ended up becoming a police officer. I was very successful as a police officer. I met my wife, and I got into real estate. And I want to kind of tell the backstory so I can show you guys how this undercurrent of limiting beliefs showed up in my life. So I ended up getting into real estate, became very successful in real estate. And here were my goals. I wanted to be everything to my wife that my dad was not to my mom. I wanted to be a great husband. Yeah. I wanted to be a great dad, because I remember looking up into the stands and not seeing my dad there, and how broken that made me feel. And I never had a dad that was my own. I was always had someone else's dad. I had a stepdad for a season, but he wasn't my own dad, not my own flesh and blood that just loved me and taught me how to be a man. I said, I want to be that for my children. And here's how I wrote it out. I said that when my children get married, they're going to have to look for a best man. I'll be the only logical decision when they have to look around and say, who was the best man in my life? There's nobody else they can point to other than me, their dad. And what's funny is young people don't make logical decisions. So while I will have been the most logical decision, I'll still be sitting in the pews with my wife watching the wedding. I won't be up as the best man, but that's okay, because I still will have been it, and that's important to me. Yeah. When it came to like my business, I wanted to be a great leader. who supported people for being loyal and doing the right thing and working really hard. And then when it came to my religious convictions, I wanted to stay true to the religious beliefs that I adopted when I was 19 years old. Well, I had the money, I had the marriage, I had everything, but I was 310 pounds.
Yeah.
And my whole life, I've been told this one philosophy, and it's a terrible philosophy, and it's called, you can't have it all. Like we say it, sometimes we even say it to our kids, I can't have it all. My friends would tell me, people that love me would say, Dan, you've got an amazing marriage. You've got an amazing relationship with your kids. You got a great business. You got all this money. You're religious. Everything you said, you have that. So what if you're 100 pounds overweight? Who cares? You can't have it all. Mm-hmm. And I believed that. Yeah. Until one day I went and joined this association with this group called Go Abundance. Mm-hmm. And it's a men's fraternity, a bunch of guys who celebrate being good dads and good husbands and being healthy. They say they're healthy, wealthy, generous people who choose to live epic lives. I was like, well, I want that. And I saw these models in front of me, these models of success in all areas of your life. Then I started asking myself, why can't I have that too? Yeah. And that's when the journey began to lose the weight. And so I went on the journey to go from 320 pounds to 200 pounds. It took me a little over a year. I started with a weight loss surgery, a very minor weight loss surgery. And then I started committing to doing things. And here's my philosophy. I never had the chance to serve in the military, but you could walk into Marine barracks boot camp in Parris Island, Georgia, and in roughly 120 days, you're a Marine. Roughly 4 months, you're a Marine. Yeah. You go in there and you got long hair, you speak a different language, and 120 days later, you speak a completely different language. You look differently, you dress differently, everything has changed. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, if you can go from being an average person to a Marine with a whole new language, like they don't call a toilet's a latrine. A bed is not a bed is a rack. That's not a kitchen, it's a mess hall. Like it's different, right? It's a different language. Right. And then their mindset is different too because of the repetition and the immersion. Well, I'm like, well, you could do anything in 100 days. So I started by going to a group fitness class called Orange Theory. Okay. And Orange Theory, you do treadmill, then you do a rower, and then you do weights, and you kind of shuffle between them, and it's roughly an hour. Well, I made a commitment that I would do 100 Orange Theory classes in 100 days. So that meant if I was sick on Sunday or something happened, I would have to go to 2 on Monday.
Right. Okay.
And I used a little hack. It's not a bad hack, but it's a little hack. Mm-hmm. And that's this. Most men have egos. I'm sure women have egos too. And they do. And we want to we always want the opposite sex to think well of us. I mean, even if you're married, you still want opposite sex to think well of you, right?
Right, of course.
So here's a hack I came up with. I started going, and then I started watching and looking to see who was the most prettiest women, and they worked really, really hard. Mm-hmm. And then what I would do is I would position myself, because in Orange Theory, they let you in a mass group, and you all go in, and then 10 go on the treadmill, 10 go on the rows, and 10 go on the weights. I would follow the prettiest, hardest working woman, and I would set myself up right next to her. So I didn't want to look like some fat clown that can't run very hard, next to this beautiful woman. So I would set myself up, and then I, over time, and I would work harder than if I was, just next to some other smelly guys like me. We never really talked, but in my mind, I'm like, she's going to think I'm a loser. She's not going to. And I wanted to use my ego to get the best of me. And I did. Yeah. So I did that first. Then I started dominating, killing all the workouts, and the workouts no longer were that challenging after 100 days. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, I need to learn flexibility and calm my mind a little bit. So I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll do hot yoga. So I stayed doing Orange Theory, but I only did that 3 or 4 days a week. And then I started doing hot yoga, and I did 100 hot yoga classes in 100 days.
Okay.
And then after 100 days, I was almost like an expert. I went from being a beginner all the way up to advanced. I could do all the advanced poses because I've done more in 100 days than most people do in 3 years.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I did that. And then I was looking for a real challenge, because I wanted to not only get in shape, I was in shape, but I wanted a challenge that would take me a long time to fulfill, that would scare me a little bit, and that would teach me lifelong habits. And I was like, someone told me an Ironman.
Yeah.
An Ironman would fulfill that. So so I asked, what does the average person do? And they say, well, average person trains for a year, then they do an Ironman. And I'm like, that sounds like the plan. I need to train for a year, but then I'm going to do 10 Ironman.
Mhm.
And, and so I did that. I trained for a year. I hired a coach, trained every day, 6 days a week, twice a day, often, a lot. And did a bunch of races. See, when you do an Ironman, you don't just like go from training to an Ironman. You have to do like a 5K, a half marathon, a full marathon, an Olympic triathlon, a sprint triathlon, Olympic triathlon. You have to do a half Ironman, then a full Ironman. So in the course of that year, I must have done 50 races total. Every weekend I was racing, and during the week I was training to get used to it. And then then I did my first race in Panama City, Florida, back, I don't know, 3 years ago. And then I traveled the world doing Ironman, New Zealand, Mexico, Puerto Rico, St. George, Utah, all over. I'm just the most fun, coolest places in the world to go. I went to Dubai. I did races all over the world and completed my goal of 10 Ironman in 2 years. And I ended up doing over 100 plus races over those 2 years, but 10 Ironman. And then I was thinking,
how many years ago?
Yeah.
How many years ago was that?
That was about a year. So not last year, but the year before was when I finished 2 years. And then, and so that led me to last year. And I was thinking, like, I need to retire from this and go on and find something else. My first love is jujitsu. I'm a state champion in jujitsu, but I was a state champion at 300 pounds in jujitsu. Now I'm at 200 pounds. I'm like, I could probably dominate the 200 pounders. So I need to give that a try. Maybe I could be a national champion. I don't know, give it a try.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, I'm going to retire. And I was telling the guys, I'm going to retire from triathlons. Nobody believed me, and go back to jujitsu. But then I felt this conviction that how could I just walk away from triathlons and Ironman events right now? Because God has really blessed me with this new health in my 40s. So I want to give that gift to someone else. And I have a skill of teaching. So I said, I'm going to serve. I want to do something to thank God for what he's done for me, allowing me to regain my health. And how do I thank God, serve his people? So I said, fine, I'm going to serve his people. And so I started looking for a blind person, because those are the only people that needed to be led through an Ironman. And it was almost impossible. I was calling up, meeting random friends that had blind children and trying to talk to them into doing it. And they're like, I'm not doing that. And it was very difficult. And then I was starting to feel like maybe God wasn't going to answer that prayer, or didn't want me to do it. And then one day I run into this boy with Down syndrome named Chris Nickage. He comes to our club and says he wants someone to help him do an Olympic triathlon, which is 25-mile triathlon. He had already done a 10-mile triathlon, and he'd done that with a Special Olympics coach, but he got too fast for her. And I needed someone else that could do the longer distances, the harder stuff with him. And she was awesome. Her name is Simone, and she actually encouraged him to do that, which is a huge thing of humility. And that began an amazing journey of helping Chris Nickage become an Ironman.
That's incredible. Wonderful, wonderful story. And as you're going through this, what were some of your fears with taking on, Chris and getting him into shape to do an Olympic and then a full Ironman triathlon?
Yeah. Well, first thing here is, before I met Chris, I had never met a person with Down syndrome in my life. I never, ever, 45 years of my life, I've never met someone with Down syndrome. I had no relationship at any level with anyone with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So obviously I was entering into a new world,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't understand it. So I had a lot of fear around, like, will I say the wrong thing and his parents won't like me? Will I push him too hard? Could I hurt him? You know, will I come off wrong? Will he like me? All of those type things. But what's crazy is, I grew up most of my life being told I wouldn't amount to much. Chris's whole life has been told he won't amount to much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very mentally tough, strong man who is uniquely broken because of how my dad abused me.
Yeah.
The things that that you win with me is by serving those that can do nothing for you. And the unique holes in my heart are filled oftentimes by people that can't do much for me. They just love me for me. They just make me feel whole when I'm around them.
Yeah.
Well, the very first time I met Chris, he hugged me and gave me this like long hug, which is Chris's calling card. He doesn't do fist bumps. He doesn't do handshakes. He doesn't do high fives. He doesn't care about coronavirus. He hugs everyone. He hugs you when he's happy. He hugs you when he's sad. He hugs you when he meets you. He hugs you when you leave. He doesn't understand and process judgment.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I needed. Like, you have to know that a divine intervention happened for a guy that's uniquely broken to be handed somebody that gives unconditional love freely because he doesn't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like, that's the most amazing thing. I'm going to kind of jump for a second and get back to your question, but like in that position of making me whole, my brokenness married to his disability makes us an amazing team. Today, Chris and I ran a half marathon together. And after the half marathon was over, he's 21 years old. He's 170 pounds. He hugged me and he was all excited about how well he did, because he did really well. And he literally jumped himself up and had his legs wrapped around my waist and his arms around me. And of course, his parents are like, "Don't hurt your Uncle Dan." That's what he called me, Uncle Dan. "Don't hurt Uncle Dan." And I'm like, stop telling him to stop that. That's it. Like, I need more of that. I can never get enough of being unconditionally loved. It's a really great thing. Yeah. So when I met Chris, my biggest concern was that I could break him or hurt him or take him too hard, because it involves a lot of trust. His parents are trusting me to take him out into the lakes, oceans, a mile out, mile back. They're trusting that I ride with him at 20 miles an hour and that I keep him from crashing his bike and hurting himself significantly. They're trusting on the run that I bring him to the brink of human exertion. Say that again. That I bring him to the brink of human exertion, but I don't break him. Well, I'm known to do that to myself, like to the point where I've peed blood during races, to where I've been injured with major cramps and continued going. I ran a full Ironman with a broken foot. But like that's not Chris's life. That's not how Chris navigates. It's not what Chris wants. And I had to learn how to navigate his life. And if I was to ever write a book about what I've learned from Chris and how I've grown as a result of that, the book would be called "It's Not My Race." Because like the story is not my story. It's a story of a boy with Down syndrome. It's a story of a family that supported him enough. It's about a young man who had dreams so big that he was willing to put himself through a year of training and then 17 hours of torture so he could get to his dreams. His dream is not to be an Ironman. Chris could give a flip whether he's an Ironman or not. Chris's dream was not to run this morning with me and do a half marathon. The reason why Chris did a half marathon today is because he wanted to hang out with his Uncle Dan. But if hanging out with Uncle Dan meant we were sitting on the couch or at a movie or playing golf or anything else, he would not have been dragging me like, "Can we go run a marathon?" He wouldn't have cared. He's not motivated by proving somebody wrong. He's not motivated by showing people that he could be something. All he cares about is feeling included and being part of a community.
It's a fundamental thing for all of us.
Yeah, fundamental thing for all of us. But we get it freely. I'm sorry, that keeps going off. Can you hear that when it goes off? I'm so sorry. Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, but we take it for granted because we get it so freely. He doesn't get those options.
Yeah.
His parents don't get those options. They just want their child to have a chance.
Yeah.
A chance to go to school, a chance to be included in society, to know that should anything happen to them, that Chris would be okay and that society would come around him. And that these limiting beliefs that I had, that you can't have it all, are the same limiting beliefs that he had, that he can't have it all because he's got Down syndrome.
Right.
When the reality is, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I know that with an Ironman, I've done one of them, and I've done several 100-mile races. It's a journey in itself. There, you have to have a certain amount of mental strength, a certain mindset that everything is going to be okay. When something goes wrong, you don't fall apart, that you strategize and you come up with how you're going to get through it. So I'm curious, how did you approach that with Chris? Because in that race, I'm sure it was a journey just like for all of us.
Oh yeah. I say that Ironman is not about doing 3 disciplines. It's not about a swim, bike, and a run. It's about a swim, a bike, a run, and then the 4th element, which you never know what it's going to be. Are you going to get like crazy high waves? Are you going to forget a piece of your equipment, or is a piece of your equipment going to break and you're going to have to swim without goggles? Are you going to have to, you're going to mess up your nutrition? Is it going to be crazy hot, hotter than expected?
Yeah.
Is it going to be colder than expected? Are you going to have a major blowout on your bike? Are you going to get in a crash? Are you going to cramp at a certain period? Are you going to have a GI issue? You just don't know. There's always another element that tests you, just like life does. And in this race, and in Chris's case, he had several of them. The first was the first challenge that we had was that we had so much attention in the water that we had media boats and lifeboats and Ironman crews in front of us that they were blocking my view. I couldn't see if we were swimming straight.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't see the guide buoys. So I would have
gosh.
I would try to shake them, swimming and shaking them. And meanwhile, I got Chris tethered to me and all these athletes passing us. So I have to swim to the inside of the course so they don't, crash into Chris and they don't, interrupt our tether. And yet I can't see where they were going in the right direction. Then I had a goggle malfunction that I couldn't clear. So I had one goggle full of water the whole time. But we ended up getting through the swim. We finished, early enough where we had about 15-20 minutes extra off, extra banked time off the swim. And then we got out on the bike. And because Chris has balance issues, he's had 8 major ear surgeries. So he has balance issues. He can't get on and off his bike on his own, or at least at that time he couldn't. Now he's getting better at doing it. So I had to actually ride ahead of him, stop him, get him off his bike to give him nutrition and water every time he wanted water and nutrition.
Oh, wow.
So he doesn't just get to drink throughout the race. He has specific every 30 minutes he drinks.
Okay.
Well, during one of our nutrition stops on the side of the road, I feel these ants biting me. And I look down and Chris is standing right in the middle of an ant pile.
Oh, gosh.
We had prepared for everything that could happen on an Ironman: a flat, a bike crash, what hospital we would take Chris to. If a car was going to hit Chris, how I would crash into Chris and him and I would go to the hospital with minor injuries instead of him going to the hospital major injury. If what he ate, what his blood type is, what hospital I would go to, all of those things, everything that you can think about, what kind of food he eats, if anything happened to his dad and he wasn't there at the end of the race, how I would take him back to his room. I mean, everything was thought through and prepared for. Ants biting us was not on the list.
Yeah.
And that was a very scary time because he had literally hundreds of ants all over his legs biting him. And I had to wash him down and clean him up and get him going again.
Oh, wow.
And then roughly 15 miles later, he starts telling me, Dan, my eyes hurt. And I'm thinking like, what are your eyes hurting from? And then my mind, I'm like, oh my God, he's going through some type of anaphylaxis, like the poison from the ant bites. These allergies are hurting him. I got to figure this out. And it was like so difficult. Well, come to realize, over time, I like in my head was doing the math. When we washed him down from head to toe. We most likely washed sunscreen into his eyes. So I was able to clean his eyes out and keep him going. And remember, every time there's an issue, Chris has a processing issue. Down syndrome limits his processing speed. So when he starts saying my eyes hurt, his speed on the bike goes to almost zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he's processing the fact that he just got bit by ants, his speed on the bike goes to zero. This is a timed event. He's got to do 140 miles in 17 hours. We have to hold a minimum of 15.5 miles an hour on the bike.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing 11 miles an hour during these incidents.
Yeah.
So we've got to get ahead. Like we don't have time to debate these things.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris recharges with a hug. So he's asking me for a hug, and we're pulling over and hugging and giving him water and nutrition, and the time just ticking.
Yeah.
So we get about another 20 miles down the road. I get a chance to see his dad. This is about mile 50. He sees his dad. His dad says the ant bites are no big deal. Chris is all excited. He got a chance to see his dad. He's recharged up, and he takes off and he starts going down this decline. I notice he's going too fast. I go up to tell him to slow down, and he ends up not responding. I tell him to slow down again. He doesn't respond. Now he's at 21, 22 miles an hour. I yell out, man, slow down. You're going too fast. You're going to get out of control. Just as I say that, he ended up grabbing his right brake, went into a skid, went out of control, and crashed his bike.
Ooh.
It was really scary because I didn't see him go down. I saw him going out of control, but I had to get away from him because he almost crashed into me. So now I'm in front of him. Mm-hmm. He's crashing behind me, and I can hear the bike scraping around down on the ground. I can hear him go down. I can hear his body hit the ground, and I'm thinking, the race is over. Yeah. Like, I'm about to turn around and see a kid with a broken collarbone, which is very common for cyclists who crash their bike. He's going to have a head injury, concussion, all these protocols we just talked about. I'm activating them in my head. Yeah. And by the way, his dad is right there. He just watched his son crash. Is he going to let him continue if he's okay? Now, I want to stop the story right there and let you know that Chris and I have been training for almost a year. And as we did our training and as we started doing little races and growing, we've been getting more and more calls and letters and messages from people around the world on Instagram, Facebook, email, saying, you gave me hope for my child.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
What you're doing is giving me hope for my child. The weight of the Down syndrome world is literally on Chris's shoulders. And I'm thinking, like, this can't be how we report back to them. The first person with Down syndrome attempts an Ironman and fails, just like we told you he would. Mm-hmm. Because that's what society says. Child's not going to amount to much. He's not going to do much. He's never going to function like a normal person. You're going to have to warehouse him. If anything happens, you have to put him in an institution. Like, that's how it goes. You made a mistake by even giving birth to him to begin with. That's what these parents hear.
Wow, that's awful.
All of that was going through my mind as Chris was going down. Mm-hmm. And because there is a God and he has ordained Chris and I to do this together, by the time I put my bike down, I turned around expecting the worst. Chris was standing up, laughing and saying, Dad, I crashed my bike. And he's having a blast. Oh, and all he's got is a scrape on his leg and a bloody knee, which is totally minor for a 22 mile an hour crash.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So we get him back on the bike. We go on the bike. And so that's the two issues he had to address. And then he hit the last one, which was the wall. Yeah. Everyone who runs and everyone who does Ironman know what the wall is.
Mm-hmm.
That's that place where your body starts telling you, I can't do it anymore. And it becomes all about mental.
Yeah.
You literally have to pick your feet up and force them to go back down.
Yeah.
Your feet feel like there's blocks in them. Every one of your muscles is screaming at you to stop, and you have to tell them that you're not going to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
I literally have dialogue inside my body where I will say to my calf, you can, I say a bad word, so I'm not gonna say it here. You can complain all you want. However,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stopping, so it'd be best for you to stop complaining. And like my brain tells my calf that.
Yeah.
My brain tells my leg, like, you can cramp up all you want. We're not stopping. So you better figure that out because we're not stopping. And the
Mm-hmm.
cramps go away.
Yeah.
Because the mind is so powerful. And so Chris hit the wall at mile 10.
Okay. Of the run.
Of the run. So he'd been through so much. He'd been up since 4 o'clock in the morning. It's now 8 o'clock at night. He's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
He's got till about 11 to finish, 11 p.m. And he's losing it. And I realized that my methods aren't working. I can help Chris with 95% of his issues, but there's roughly a 5 to 10% that only his dad can get him through. So I called Nick to come out, and Nick came out and said a bunch of things to Chris. And one of the things that he said that was really special, he said to Chris, there's a battle going on right now between your dream and your pain. Who's gonna win? And Chris said, my dream's gonna win, Dad. And then
powerful.
And then Nick, who's like 6'7", he's played basketball in college. He comes back and he says to Chris and I, and to this group of people that's around us, but he's saying it to me, but I think he's also saying it to himself. He says, God sent angels to be with my son. I'm going to let those angels take him in. And he left at mile 13 and we never saw him again. The next 13 miles was just Chris and I and my team. He completely gave over his son. And for me, that was a very validating time because, I didn't think I would amount to much. I didn't think I would be someone that could be part of changing the world. I just figured I was someone that would grow up to be like my dad, or maybe not grow up to be like my dad, but not do that much. And to think that another man would call you God's provision for someone else, refer to you as an angel, and then turn their 21-year-old Down syndrome, loving, sweet, kind, amazing young man over to you and say, Dan, I'm going to trust that you'll push him, but don't break him. And that knowing that Chris is about to go to the depths of difficulty like he's never gone before.
Yeah.
It may be one of the greatest honors of my life.
Absolutely. And those who've done Ironmans or endurance races to that extent understand completely what you're talking about because they've hit that before. But it's hard if you haven't done those races to know that you're at a turning point. You to take that next step, and you also being physically, in it, you're worn out and your mind is on this man who you are working your hardest to get through the next step, and you're finding some kind of power and energy within you to guide him to continue to be that beacon of hope and light for him, just to get him to those last 13 miles. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was an honor. The whole time we were racing, I was thinking, like, what do I do next? How do I do this? How do I do that? And it really, Nick empowered me when he said that angel comment, and it validated every bad thing that's ever happened in my life.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
It really, like, that statement on that course at that moment healed me of things that I've been carrying around for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then out of result of that, I then started generating clarity and started thinking differently. See, Chris has an intellectual disability. He has no flipping idea how far 26 miles is. He doesn't have any idea how far 1 mile is. And what I was doing is I was running with a common technique called a run walk, where we would run for 6 minutes, walk for 1 minute. And we were holding roughly a 12 to 11 minute mile pace, which was great.
Yeah.
But he started asking me, like, how much longer, Dan? I'm like, 6 minutes. How much longer, Dan? 5 minutes and 30 seconds. How much longer, Dan? 5 minutes. So he's asking me how much longer till the next break. I'm telling him to stop asking me. I'm getting annoyed with him. And I'm realizing he has no idea how long this pain's going to last. And he just wants the pain to stop.
Yeah.
And it's tethered to me. So I'm pulling him to a pace, and he's got to run the pace that I pull him to.
Yeah.
So then I said, you know what, Chris? I remembered something his dad taught me early on, but we never talked to it after this one time. He said, and it was because they ride their bicycle with Chris 100 miles around a 0.09 mile loop in their neighborhood. It's gated, so they've got a loop, and it's not even a full mile. So we do 120 loops to do a 100-mile ride.
Oh my.
Yeah, I can see your face like that sounds like hell. That's not fun. Same loop 100 times. Here's the deal. Chris loves counting his mailbox.
Oh.
So he counts 5 loops, 10 loops. We're going to do 10 loops 10 times. That's 100. And that familiarity works for him, right?
Yep.
So I was like, oh, right in the middle of the race. I'm like, oh, I know what it is. We have all these cones on the side of the road. I could say, Chris, we're going to run for 10 cones, walk for 2. After I did that, we were golden.
Yeah.
We finished the race. We got a chance to finish the race on time. And Chris got to hug all of his friends on the way in. And the Down syndrome world took a deep breath before the race started. And as we entered that finisher chute, you could feel the Down syndrome world take this big exhale and say, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God, my child can amount. My sister can amount to something. My brother can amount to something, and here's proof. And here's the other cool thing. For the rest of humanity, for the rest of history, when a doctor says to a mother and father that are expecting a baby, I'm sorry, I have bad news for you. Your child has Down syndrome. Now, here's your options. I'm not going to tell you what options are, but you know what those options are, right?
Yes. Yep.
They're going to say, well, why do we need those options? Didn't one of the boys, isn't there someone with Down syndrome that completed an Ironman?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, think about how many people don't do that who don't have Down syndrome. We can push ourselves to capabilities, like you said at the beginning, when you get rid of those limiting beliefs. You find the right support team. You find the right people that educate you to accomplish your great dreams, and just get out of the way. Let people achieve those dreams. It's a powerful thing.
Well, I think it's more than just get out of the way. It is, why don't we just find out what they can do, and stop telling them what they can't do.
Yeah.
And figure out what they can do. Chris has defied all the odds.
Yeah.
But so did Roger Bannister. I mean, in sports, the guy who ran the first 4-minute mile, like, that's done by high school.
Yeah.
What if we just say, and like, let's just see what's possible? Because in Chris's world, they told him after his ear surgeries that he would never swim again. He couldn't get his ears wet. His dad said, well, the hell with that.
Yeah.
We're not limiting his life. We're going to let him do it. We're going to figure it out. And he's had no adverse effects of swimming. He has to wear earplugs and he has to put things over that. But you know what? If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. You know, Les Brown has this saying. He says, someone else's opinion of you does not have to be your reality.
It's a great quote. It's a great statement. It's a great mantra for life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to know that God used a broken vessel like me to be part of changing the world, to know that I'm standing next to a Christopher Columbus, an Abraham Lincoln, a Martin Luther King, a first that has done it, has changed the world. It's someone that has physically changed the world. I stand next to them.
Yeah.
The lessons that Chris has taught me that I'd like to leave your audience with, and then I can do a couple questions at the end here is, number one, Chris lives in the moment. What if Dan just lived in the moment? Wasn't worried about the next race or the next day or the next thing. I just lived in this moment, was just happy in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing Chris taught me is that my world is a lot different when I hug everybody first and I ask questions and make statements second.
Yeah.
The third thing that Chris taught me was that anything in life you can accomplish with a commitment of just getting 1% better. Just 1%. See, Chris's ability to get 25% better every day is not there. But he can accomplish things just like you can accomplish things. He just has to do it at a 1% level. But what if we actually made a commitment to getting 1% better in our marriages every day?
Yeah.
What would your marriage look like in 25 years? You couldn't get divorced because you'd be so magically in love because you've made the commitment 1% better. What if we just made a commitment to get 1% better in our health, 1% better in our business, 1% better in our relationships? We'd have amazing lives over time. Get outside of this desire to change everything overnight. I'm going to lose the weight tomorrow. That's not going to happen. And all it does is lead you to being unhappy.
Absolutely.
I'm going to fix the problem tomorrow. Like, it doesn't happen. And it just leads you to being unhappy. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that. I'm curious, with these lessons that you've taken, are you taking on a different project now? I know you have a charity, that you help, One More Kid charity. So are you kind of employing some of these ideas and thoughts into that, or is that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your charity?
Yeah, so I have my own charity. It's called One More Kid. And the concept is we just return dignity to children. I grew up poor and sometimes I didn't have the ability to go on a field trip.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that kids had dignity. And then my wife and I lost a child, late-term miscarriage in between my two boys. And his name was Zach. And my wife wanted to remember Zach and do something to honor Zach. So we said, we're always going to act like we have one more kid to pay for a field trip. We have one more kid to pay for school supplies. We have one more kid to pay for soccer. If Zach was alive, we'd have those expenses and we'd have to figure it out. So we're always going to pay for one more kid. And I'm
That's incredible.
We currently pay for one more person to go to college right now. We're paying for one more person to get married. And my wife and I have decided that we're going to donate 1/3 of our estate when we die to a young person that would have represented the life of Zach. We feel very confident that we've identified that person, and they're now a couple. So it was like hard because it was like there was a guy already, and then there was a young lady, and they ended up getting married. They're going to get married in November, so it's most likely going to be those two. Nice. She's a Venezuelan refugee that came here on asylum. Okay. With $400 in her pocket. Wow. We now pay for her to go to college. Oh. We're now paying her father's portion of her wedding. Because when she came here from Venezuela, she knew she would most likely never see her parents again, or any of her family. She can't go back to Venezuela, and they can't come here from Venezuela.
Yeah.
So we feel very good about that. So our charity, One More Kid, is a way of returning dignity to children, and also a family charity to honor the life of our son Zach that died in a late-term miscarriage.
It's incredible. I really appreciate all of your time. I know you have a busy day. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, the insight, the lessons you learned. I know people will take this away. And I have a large, endurance audience, ultra marathons, Ironman. So I know they'll appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my honor. Chris's book, 1% Rule, is coming out on October 5th. So if you could, and if you've got the interest in it, you can pre-order it now from Amazon. Okay. And I'd love for people to do that. And I'd love for you guys to follow his journey, my journey, on Instagram. And you can follow him, Chris Nikic, and you can follow Dan Grieb on Instagram. And we would love to interact with you there and kind of share our journey. This is not about Chris. It's not about Dan Grieb. This is about, every person out there that's been told they wouldn't amount to much, and about showing them what's possible when you make a commitment to just get 1% better every day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, all of you guys. I hope you follow Dan and Chris. And thank you again for joining us. Everyone, have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next week.
God bless. Thank you.